Hello and welcome to the agenda. I am Ajay Kaul. In this program today we will talk about Sri Lanka's case at the UNHRC and why it is seeking India's help. Just a week from now, UN Human Rights Council or UNHRC is expected to vote on a resolution regarding alleged war crimes in Sri Lanka during the decades of armed conflict with erstwhile Tamil group LTTE. The resolution calls for trial against leaders like Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa in foreign countries. So Sri Lanka is worried and has reached out to India for help. In the agenda today, we will analyze this subject and try to understand the matter. We have with us two retired diplomats, Ambassador Deepak Vora and Ambassador Shilkant Sharma. But before we begin our conversation, have a look at this small report.
Since 2013, Sri Lanka has faced three UNHRC resolutions which call for independent international investigation into alleged war crimes committed by both government troops and Liberation Tigers of Tamil Eelam or LTTE during the final phase of the civil war which ended in 2009. At the ongoing session of the UNHRC, Sri Lanka faces yet another resolution which is expected to be put to vote on March 22-23rd. The draft of the resolution says that there has been persistent lack of accountability of domestic mechanisms to provide justice to the war crime victims. The resolution calls for holding of trials in foreign countries against those accused of war crimes, including the government forces, when current Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa was the president of the country. Sri Lanka had earlier given a commitment in 2015 to a time-bound investigation of alleged war crimes during the military campaign against the LTTE, which was an armed group of ethnic Tamils. The draft resolution, sponsored by United Kingdom, Canada, Germany, Malawi, Montenegro and North Macedonia, was formally submitted on March 12. The draft, which has been circulated earlier, has been changed to include a clause that calls on Sri Lanka to fulfill its commitment on devolution of powers to ethnic minority Tamils and providing our provincial council polls. Clearly concerned over the upcoming vote, Sri Lanka President Gotabaya Rajapaksa was the brother of Mahinda Rajapaksa and was the defense secretary during the military campaign against LTTE, has reached out to Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi for support at the UNHRC. India has not opened its card yet and is likely to keep the suspense until the voting takes place. Bureau Report.
Now let's welcome our guests, Ambassador Vora and Ambassador Sharma. Welcome to both of you. So let me begin. Thank you, my pleasure. So let me begin by going to Ambassador Vora about Sri Lanka's case, which is coming up at the UNHRC, and Sri Lanka is obviously worried if the the resolution is adopted against them, then Mahinda Rajapaksa can be under dock. So how do you see this development?
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Cole. It's always a pleasure to learn from you, and I'm delighted that you have my colleague, Ambassador Shilkant, on the show. You said that you have two diplomats. No, you have 25. I'm one, and Shil is equal to 24. The United Nations cares about you. The United Nations cares about human rights so much that it has no less than 10 organizations working on human rights related issues. As you said, UN Human Rights. So the organization, you recall that the US 2 years because of that chronic bias against Israel. And they always singled out Israel for scrutiny of its actions in the occupied Palestinian territories. No other country was similarly named. Sir, the border problem, who are the countries doing the scrutinizing? Saudi Arabia, Venezuela, Ethiopia, wow. Countries that have such an amazing record. I mean, Venezuela, where Nicolas Maduro has strangled the political opposition, free speech. Philippines, where President Rodrigo Duterte's policies have resulted in extrajudicial killings of suspected drug dealers.
and Ethiopia, where the state of emergency is in place for a long time. Cuba, with the idea of human rights. Hungary, whose prime minister described his country as an illiberal and abuses arbitrary arrest. China and human rights, do they have a word or a phrase in Mandarin for human rights? Either. Now, the point here is, sir, that since its creation in 2006, members of the Council have drafted, negotiated, adopted apparently some 1150 or 1200 texts, mostly resolutions. Then, of course, the US came in, went away, etc. Now, why is Sri Lanka seeking our support ahead of this session?
Right.
These have such incidents of human rights violations have been reported in many African countries, but Sri Lanka. Sir, the accusations stem from Sri Lankan military's long war, as you said, to crush the LTT, particularly the last phase of the war. Sir, I come from an olive green family. I would like to know how human rights are to be implemented in a battle zone. When the other fellow is firing at you, what do you say? I won't fire back because I don't want to violate your human rights? Yes, killing people who are innocent, who are civilians, who are non-combatants is not acceptable. But then, please remember, sir, there have been very credible reports that the LTTT, the Liberation Tigers of Tamil Nadu, were using civilians as human shields. What happens in situations like this? 2009, the present Prime Minister, Rajapaksa Mahinda, was the president when they defeated the Tamil Tigers. So they say 40,000 civilians. How do you know, sir? I really have no idea. Sri Lanka had even co-sponsored the resolution at the UN Human Rights Council along with 11 countries calling for the investigation of wartime atrocities by both government forces and the Tigers. So if you say that the Tamil Tigers were responsible, who are you going to hold accountable? The Vella Paran, whatever his name was, Peer Bhakran, who now is either in hell or in heaven, I don't know where he is. Who are you going to hold responsible? The important thing, sir, I think India has taken a very, very good position that the High Commissioner's office has come out with a document, and this has to be looked at very, very carefully. I mean,
Right.
India has its own Tamil population, sir, and numbering in the millions. It's a very sensitive issue for us. Also, sir, we have to be aware that if we start criticizing all and sundry, then these people will turn around and say, well, what about Kashmir? Human rights have been violated. And there is a whole group of fellows, including that paragon of human rights called China and another paragon of Pakistan, which will want to hold us to account. So therefore, we have to play our case very carefully. And I personally believe that we should give Sri Lanka the fullest possible support without in any way justifying atrocities against civilians if they have a gun.
Right. So, Ambassador Shilka Sharma, you heard Ambassador Vora about how India should, what India should do, because we have, as he mentioned, about Tamil population, and I guess that is the pressure because of which India is under pressure maybe to vote against Sri Lanka, but at the same time, we have to keep friendly relations in mind. So, what do you say on this?
It's a problem which Sri Lanka has to face itself, and now to drag India into this thing is an action which it has many aspects. Number one, I agree with my dear colleague and friend Ambassador Deepak Vora that Human Rights Commission itself at this juncture carries very little credibility. But that is between Sri Lanka and the Human Rights Commission. As far as India is concerned, we this matter according to our own perception.
Right.
So, for instance, I just go back to the time when the similar history, and Rajapaksa was the president in 2014, and the Sri Lankans had a Commonwealth summit. And India then could not attend. Prime Minister Manmohan Singh at that time could not go to the summit there because of the concerns that our very important state Tamil Nadu has, or people in Tamil Nadu have about the Tamil Sri Lanka. So now these are the factors which determine our stance on what has Sri Lanka done in the last 2014 and now, for instance, in just 7 years. There was a Sri Lankan resolution itself when the previous government was in power in Colombo, and the Human Rights Commission started working on it. So, but as soon as the new government came in, they gave up on those things. And the whole long history of trying to get devolution and trying to get the rights of the Tamil, it was also put aside. So kind of a background. If Sri Lanka comes to India, we should weigh it because whether they care for our support, because we should not be suckered into supporting them and then they go away. They say, okay, India in any case will support. We will do what we like.
Yeah.
So these are the factors that we have to bear in mind.
So as you mentioned about the previous government, that was the Sirisena government actually which wanted to, I mean, because of domestic politics, they wanted to corner Mahinda Rajapaksa and brother. So that is why they had moved that resolution. But here is the government of the accused. I mean, Mahinda Rajapaksa is in government, so they want to save him. So it's the internal politics playing out, no, isn't it, Ambassador Sharma?
No, it is not internal politics. Actually, they have developed a certain insularity about the Tamil minority, and they come to elections on that of the hardline, conservative majority, and so successive governments, either even if they want to, they are weak-footed about trying to help the Tamils, or governments like Rajapaksa's, which have been very unrestrained, the kind of the war on their own people, and the cases against the people who are there, the army chief at that time, then the kind of politics which is going on. So all these factors not down to the credit of Sri Lanka. And still they want to come and get India's help.
Right.
Now, India has had a principle about it that, Human Rights Commission has no business to get into the domestic situation of countries. But here they are trying to make use of our principle against us. So this is where I feel our government might be generous and they might try to help out. But these factors remain, this, and Sri Lankan, Colombo, for instance, is they are not even grateful for India's support in the past when we have given.
Yeah. I'll come to that later. But Ambassador Vora, as we talk about, Sri Lanka, this resolution, which says that the internal process of Sri Lanka have not, given justice to the Tamils, or war crime victims, we'll say. So, do you agree with that resolution, that internal system, that is why there should be a trial at the international level or maybe foreign countries?
Mr. Kaul, I cannot disagree with what my distinguished colleague Ambassador Sharma has said, because his expertise and experience in this area, and yours is much greater than mine. Our envoy to the UN agencies in Geneva had said that an assessment of the High Commissioner's report raises important concerns. He did not accept it. He just said it raises important issues.
Yeah.
That is significant.
Yeah.
So we are not in the business of naming and shaming people. To embarrass Sri Lanka, what will the world achieve? Will you be able to find a resolution to the Tamil issue, or will there be a hardening of attitude? Kisi ko aap akela kar dete ho. That person then becomes more aggressive. There's an English expression that a cornered dog stops barking, starts biting. You cannot embarrass them. You cannot name and shame them. You have to find a solution. What is India's interest? All three of us have talked about the Tamil population of India and their concerns. So we have to find a solution, keeping in mind always that whatever solution we find has to be meaningful devolution, which contributes directly to the unity and integrity of Sri Lanka. This is the 13th Amendment to its constitution, aimed at reconciliation with the country's Tamil minority. But this cannot be done at the cost of Sri Lanka's unity.
Yeah.
Whether Sri Lanka stands by us or not, that is the Chinese thing. Hum tumko ye denge, uske badle mein tum humko ye
Ambassador
do.
Vora,
Sir, let me complete it. It's not a zero-sum game. We have a particular responsibility as a larger country to our neighbor. If they've made a mistake, we've told them, and I can assure you, they've been told in private that you should try and see how this can be sorted out so that you don't become another Israel with resolution. I don't know how many, 7, 8, 10 resolutions against Sri Lanka. You don't become another Israel. I believe the Sri Lankans would see this. It's a delicate issue.
Ambassador Vora, what I think Ambassador Shilka Sharma was trying to say is how grateful or how commitment to his promises Sri Lanka is. Now let us talk about devolution of powers. They have been saying it for over a decade. So it has not been done.
Nothing.
So 13th
Absolutely
Amendment.
nothing has
So
happened.
13th Amendment has not been done. So there is a concern. It is being delayed and delayed and delayed. I don't think they have any interest to do that, implement that.
Sir, I wouldn't go to the extent of this because I don't know what's in their mind. But let's just say that.
No, we go by indication. 10 years have passed.
The indicators are very clear. They should have done it long ago.
Yeah.
But again, sir, a few years, I wonder, let's take the Palestinian issue. And it's going on for, since before I was born, and there is no solution. The world is a bit tired of
No, but here is Ambassador Vora, here is a commitment given by the Sri Lankan government to India that we will do it.
Absolutely, there is a commitment, and we should press them bilaterally, sir. Sir, there is something, again, Ambassador Sharma, I don't know if you agree with me, but I've always believed that when it comes to this kind of an issue, the philosophy should be support in public, criticize in private.
But Ambassador Vora,
publicly
they have to do it. They have to implement the 13th Amendment. So
that's what democracy, that's what diplomacy is not about. You do not humiliate the other fellow. You tell him that do it because this is in your own interest. Right. And we may not be able, Ambassador Sharma has done it many times in his UN postings, I have. We may not be able to support you all the time unless you show some forward movement. That's the way India believes it. And we've been very successful at this. In the case of Sri Lanka also, I'm convinced it will happen.
So I'll go to Ambassador Sharma about this devolution, 13th Amendment. So as I mentioned, the Sri Lanka has not been doing it for over a decade now. And I don't think they have any inclination to do it. What do you say?
Even the recent interactions with them, the statement issued in Colombo from their side was
when our foreign minister went there,
this particular thing they wanted to put on ice. They want to just
keep it aside,
shoulder it and
keep it aside.
Yeah. So that remains their position. Now I get the point which my distinguished friend is making, and he has a thing, and we have generally stuck to that kind of a position throughout. That being a close neighbor, we have stood by Sri Lanka through thick and thin. And my only concern is that I am not in government. I am speaking here from my experience that the Sri Lankan government should realize this feeling and the anger in India about their policy.
Right.
And in spite of that, if government of India comes to them to invoking some higher principle, holiness and our old relationship, they should value it. They should not treat us then in that case like that they have they've got their thing and then after that forget about it, and then go and hobnob with the Chinese.
Right.
So this is the in diplomacy they have to, as going by what Ambassador Vora was saying, that there is a certain public position and there is a certain private position. So even given that kind of a thing, they have to appreciate the kind of action that India does and putting its own position at a very critical juncture, at an edge. But they don't appreciate that. There should be some appreciation. And the only means and the token of that appreciation is they have to act on Amendment 13 and to do some devolution. Yes. Instead, they're putting the clock back on in agreed to do in the past.
Right. And there, I think, pitting India against China, if you see the projects also, the latest port container project being cancelled, Ambassador Sharma, is that,
yes.
Do you also feel that they are pitting India against China or something?
Well, they are trying to see, they're trying to play footsie with China and everyone. And they have given us another port to India and Japan. So they are trying to, take some steps to give us signals that, look, all is not lost. And we, being good neighbors, we always look for positive signals and, ignore the negative so that things go forward. So, but that generosity and that hard-heartedness on the part of India which Indian government never tries to trumpet. I'm just saying it in the kind of this public discussion, in non-government environment, that that hard-heartedness has to be reciprocated and valued.
Right.
I see less and less of that coming from Sri Lanka at this time.
Right. So Ambassador
They
Vora,
go, they invite the Pakistani Prime Minister and then take arms from Pakistan. And where is Sri Lanka, Pakistan? Where is the neighborhood? There is a thousands of kilometers of ocean between them. What connects them?
no,
But,
even the Pakistani Prime Minister had to use Indian airspace to go to Sri Lanka.
So their connection is because of India and through India.
Yeah. So is it
So this is
only to
where-
lead? Is it only to needle India, Ambassador Shilkar Sharma?
No. It is not like that. You see, there is a certain pop perception, which is inculcated through external influence, that somehow or the other, if you gang up against India,
Right.
it is good for you.
Right.
But it is not good. Actually, India, on the other hand, has been actually encouraging bilateral relationship and regional cooperation.
Yes.
And in both these areas, we've been helping. I mean, look at send them
Vaccine.
the vaccine.
Yeah.
So India is not mean. India is not bloody minded at all. This whole process.
Yeah. So
And
we are.
my point is that it has to appreciate.
Yeah.
You have to value this.
So Ambassador Vora, Ambassador Sharma has a very valid point that we are large-hearted, but Sri Lanka has to reciprocate in equal terms. What do you say?
They call this, Ambassador Sheel, we call it the tyranny of the weak. आप उसकी मदद करते हो तो छोटा वाला कहता है, why should I return something? I mean, बेटा जो है, बच्चा जो है, माँ से कुछ लेता है, माँ से जब बच्चे बनो, तो मैं क्यों बनूं? मेरे को तो जो चाहिए था मिल गया. Contrary to public perception, and I was there not too long ago, India continues to considerably influence Sri Lanka's political, diplomatic, and strategic perception. It's a Hobson's choice for Sri Lanka, sir, let's face it. It has to evolve a carefully worked out strategy, lest its decisions generate unpleasant consequences in the future. Loss of credibility for the government is the biggest threat. And let's also face it, sir, that the Rajpaksa brothers...
So, Ambassador Vora, do you... Ambassador
They
Vora...
won with the resounding victory in the election. People trust them, their own people. So what do the people of Sri Lanka, the majority that elected, what do they want? You have to look at that just as we have to think about what our Tamils would say. It's not easy, sir. It's a very complicated world.
I know it's very complicated. So do you think or do you believe that India still wields any influence in the polity of Sri Lanka?
Oh, tremendous, sir, tremendous. Let me assure you that the $3 billion that we gave them as development partnership assistance, of which a quarter was grant, and we built homes for internally displaced persons, etc., was greatly appreciated.
That was for our, I mean, the Jaffna Peninsula for the Tamils.
So let me tell you, sir. Okay, let me put it very bluntly. Undiplomatic, so please forgive me. Ambassador Sheel, I'm not as good a diplomat as you are, so please forgive me. Let's assume for a moment that we decide to go in and give a couple of tight slaps to the Rajapaksa brothers. Who's going to come to help them? Pakistan? China? They will be isolated. No one will dare take on India. And sir, I'm sticking my neck out. We're already talking of Quad Plus. I wouldn't be surprised if Sri Lanka, with it, whatever navy it has, decides to join.
No, I don't think so.
That's where the wind is blowing.
I don't think Sri Lanka will join. Ambassador,
you're entitled to your opinion.
No, I don't think. Ambassador Shilkar Sharma, do you think Sri Lanka will join against China? I don't think.
No, they have never done this. Way back in Pandit Nehru's time, 62, they had the Colombo plan, which was even at that time was trying to take middle position between India and China at that time.
Right.
So that's a small country. They have their own compulsion.
Right.
We appreciate that. We understand that. We don't push them.
Correct.
We want them to come to our help and to understand and show regard to us when we need it.
Understand our sentiments.
That's it.
That's correct. You don't hurt me, I won't
reciprocate.
hurt you.
Right.
And reciprocate when it is required. So, and if they balk about it, then then it's a problem.
So what if we talk about our sentiments, our major sentiments are about the ethnic Tamils who are there, that they should get their due, isn't it? So is the Sri Lanka government giving that? Ambassador Sharma first, I'll come to you, then maybe Ambassador Vora.
Well, that has been a process which has been on and off. Governments in Colombo at times don't have shown interest, and they've also assured us that they are working on it. And we
No,
let them be. We
that
didn't
assurances we
interfere.
have heard, but on the ground,
We,
have you seen that?
but on the ground, you can't hold their nose and force them. They will have to do that according to their own abilities, and so long as their commitment remains and
Right.
they don't try to dilly-dally about it and give a whitewash to it.
Right.
We should show patience. Uh, and in international arena, Sri Lanka, generally they have seen us in the international arena. They have
Right.
not gone.
So our time is running out. So Ambassador Vora, last few comments.
I
maybe.
just, last point,
1 minute.
last comment was this, sir.
1 minute,
You
yeah.
know that the SITI emerged because they felt that the Tamils were being discriminated against decades ago,
Yeah.
that they weren't getting justice. So it came. It didn't come because P. Bhakran wanted to have a picnic. There were genuine grievances. Unless those grievances are addressed, the stability that Sri Lanka seeks will not be there. And sir, may I just conclude by saying,
Yeah.
my ability to hurt him is much greater than his ability to hurt me. He understands that.
So Sri Lanka understand that, but I think they have to reciprocate, I guess, in better ways. But the time of this program today is over. Thank you, both of you, for participating.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Ambassador Shri. Thank you, Mr. Kaul. Thank you.
This is all in the agenda today. Thanks for watching. I'll be back with another important topic tomorrow. Till then, goodbye.